I think we can all agree that this might have been one of the worst casts in challenge history, but
Wow.
maybe one of the best finals ever. I'm John Chidley Hill.
And I am Sheldon Alexander. I don't know if I agree with that statement. Like it was actually, you know what? Maybe I could be convinced.
Well, this is You Killed It, the podcast talking about the challenge. Let's start with this very controversial topic I just introduced off the hop. Is this the worst cast in challenge history in terms of gameplay?
I mean, it's a pretty bad cast. And even
Pretty
just how
bad.
the final like played out, we'll get to it at the very end, but there's a lot of decisions that were made at different times that drastically alters who wins this season. And I don't know if that's happened before where it's like that drastic. Like there's points within the game that things could go way differently if these people played the game properly.
Well, I mean, we can sort of touch on it off the hop. Last episode ended with everyone at the club. TJ shows up to announce that the final is starting like now. Mm-hmm. I mean, they have time to go change and pack up their gear, but like pulling them out of the club. I have to ask you, like right now, because this has never really happened that TJ's been in the club scene. What kind of club hang do you think TJ is? Because like we know he's a good time.
I'm going to stop you right here. I'm going to stop you right here before we even get too far into this. Okay. I'm going to stop you right here. There is no question that TJ is just a great hang, period. No matter the 100%. Setting, no matter the place, no matter where you're at, TJ would be a great hang. And I know we'll get to it, but like just seeing TJ in any scenario, he's just good peoples. He's just good
for peoples. Sure. I'm not saying there's no doubt that he's going to be fun to be with. Mm-hmm. My question is, do you think like he's a dance guy? Do you think he's posted up at the bar? Do you think he's like finds a conversation corner? Like, what do you think his like go-to club move is?
I think that whatever the vibes are, TJ meets those vibes.
Oh, okay. So he like goes, he like checks things out, sees the lay of the land, and then like adapts.
Here's a little insight, John. I don't know. I feel like we've known each other a long time, but I don't know if we've been in like a club setting with each other before.
We have not.
So what I'll say to you is I'd like to think of myself as someone who can do multiple things depending on the vibes. Sometimes it's chilled. Sometimes it's just posted up at the bar. Sometimes it might be a little two-step in the middle of the dance floor, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit of everything. Just depends on what the vibes are. And I feel like TJ would be a similar hang.
Okay. All right. I can see that, right? And like what's interesting about him is I'm 90% sure he's straight edge. So like interesting because like he might be at the bar, but he's having like tonic water with some bitters. You know what I mean? Like he's not getting wild, but I feel like he can step up. Like I think he can be high enough on life to like still be a good time.
In the wise words of noted poet Birdman, I'm flying any weather. I feel like that's TJ. He can be fly no matter whatever the setting is. He's good.
So this is the point I want to get to.
Hold on, you're just gonna let that go? I just quoted Birdman, Daddy, I'm flying any weather. You're just gonna let that pass?
I can't top quoting Birdman. There's nothing that I could possibly add to a Birdman quote.
Note behind the scenes. If people want to know the BTS of just before we started recording this, insane giggling by myself over the most ridiculous things ever. Just saying, oh, it's going to be one of those pods, isn't it?
It is. It's 100% going to be one of those podcasts.
Yeah, I didn't even do the thing. Like, we got to let people know this is the finale recap. So both episodes of the finale are being recapped in this episode of You Killed It, which is number 278.
You think
season 39?
You think with 278 episodes of this podcast under our belts, we'd be a little smoother at these things?
Nope.
That ain't us.
People want.
No, we're true to ourselves, which is scattered, distracted, overworked.
So TJ says this is get ready for the hardest final you've ever seen.
Debatable. Okay. I feel like he's legally obligated to say that ahead of every final because like they're not all this hard.
Okay, I got another
or this easy.
Oh, Did you think it was an easy final?
I don't think it was the hardest.
Okay, fair. Another question for you. Nari says that some of these people that are in the final are very lame and they don't really deserve to be in the final. Do you agree
Yes.
with Narice?
100%.
I didn't even finish the question.
Well, I was going to raise this topic myself. I feel like Narice and Jay deserve to be there. Not that I like Jay, but they're both active players in the game. They were making moves. They were doing things.
I think Mariah fits that bill too.
Yeah, that's fair. She was playing we can call it an unorthodox game, but like she was in there. She was in conversations.
In the mix.
She was in the mix. Emmanuel, Corey, Berna, Colleen. I don't want to say they coasted, but like they just did what they were told by Jay and Michelle, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
And then like saw which way the wind was blowing and then went with it. And like notably at this point, Narice is the only one that's been in an elimination. And I don't want to say that the mark of a good player is going into elimination, because I think it's the opposite. I think the point of the game is to avoid elimination.
Mm-hmm.
However, these people were just like basically hanging back for the entire season.
Yeah, I think Corey made a stink to start the season and then sat himself back down and kind of relaxed and coasted his way.
Well, this is partly my point about like, is this the worst cast ever? Because like, just atrocious gameplay from everyone except I'd say Narice. Of like the people who are left.
I'm getting too tempted to jump too far ahead, so let's go through this finale here, just because I think there's lots that happens and there's lots of elements to it that I don't really think were that important, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So let's if we go through, and maybe we should have talked about this before the pod, but let's just try to go through the episode and we'll stop whenever we think there's something that's noteworthy enough to stop on. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah. First stop. They're all eating a meal before they depart for the final. And Mariah notices that she has a note under her plate. And it turns out they all have letters from home.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say this. This was a valuable insight into what makes these people tick. And it really sort of like underscored why some of them make the decisions that they make when you get some insight into what their childhoods and homes were like. Like a lot of people with like maybe a lot of things that they need to unpack.
Yeah, definitely not going to say you're wrong. I'll be honest. I found this scene to be a bit too long.
Yeah.
But like the moment that stood out to me the most, and I know there's like, they're trying to tug on some heartstrings here, which didn't work on me. But the part that stuck out to me the most was Emmanuel getting a letter from his girlfriend, and then they immediately show a flashback of him cheating on her with three different women, and he says, "I better win or else it's not worth it." Yo, that might be the sicko line of the season. Because the other part of this is those are the three different women he cheated on his girlfriend with. But we also know he shot his shot with others as well.
Yeah.
Now, we'll get to Emmanuel and whether it's worth it or not. I feel like that's the question after, like at the end of this episode. But that line, wow.
I think the point in the Emmanuel crying when he says, "She's too perfect for me." Yeah, buddy, you've been self-sabotaging you and your relationship all season.
Yeah.
Right? Like you think she's too good for you. And I want to be clear, she is too good for Emmanuel.
Yeah,
but
he's a clown.
He's a clown, but he's terrible. But like, yeah, she's too good for you because you act this way.
Correct.
Right? Yeah. And like you've just like damaged and hurt her to make yourself feel good. Because you can't be alone for like, I don't know how long they were there. Let's say 6 weeks. Like,
I'm going to say this might take us on a wild tangent, or maybe you'll just agree and we'll move on. Okay. I think someone like that who does something like that on television, they're doing it because they're wildly insecure.
Yeah, 100%. That's
Right?
why I was driving at. Like
Yeah.
he is insecure, so he has to make himself feel good. I mean, I just said, he cheated for 6 weeks, but like, it's not even that. Apparently, he and Olivia hooked up like immediately as soon as they got in the house, like within the first week. Like, you
Oh,
can't be away from your partner for a week without cheating. Like, that's you. Like, that's a you problem, you know?
did we have this conversation on this pod where I defined a late bloomer?
No.
We
Hit
had
me
this.
with it, and then we should move on to the actual final.
Do you know what the funny part is? We're both extremely busy and have both said, yo, we got to be done this pod by a certain time, and have yet proceeded to talk about the most amount of fuckery. It's not the final. But this is what the people want. So the late bloomer term comes from one of my best friends who played D1 basketball in the States, right?
Do I know
And
this person?
no.
Okay.
You would know them. You would know them. Didn't go to our high school.
Hmm.
Almost did, actually. He was the one that suggested we all go to Northern, actually, and then
Oh,
pulled out to go somewhere else to play basketball.
okay.
Story for another day. Anyways, he goes to university, and when he was a freshman, one of the like seniors explained this whole thing about, like, he was describing one of their teammates who, let's say, was very inexperienced with the opposite sex, we'll say. So then they get to university, and then now, like, you have like a lot of fans, you have a lot of female fans, some throwing themselves at you, and you don't know how to handle it. And so you kind of run wild within it, and you're like taking everything that's there because you don't know how to deal with it. And you call that, and his simple term was, oh, he's a late bloomer. Didn't know
That
how to
makes a lot
deal
of
with it.
sense.
Didn't know how to deal with it. Never really got girls before. And so now that you are getting girls, doesn't know how to deal.
I like this, and I think you're probably right. You're probably onto something
Yeah.
with Emmanuel. I mean,
Yeah. I definitely think that's a thing. But yeah, that's what happened there. It's all insecurity. Let's get to the final, though. Final
yeah.
divided into 3 parts, exactly like the game. I wrote down some notes here. 26 miles. First game's is control. Everyone's tied together. And inside this like massive fortress, there's 17 chests and 1 golden chest. Each contestant has to get 3 ropes. If you get 3 ropes of the same color, you can disconnect from the rope that's attaching everyone. And now you run your 3 ropes back, and then you have to put your ropes on a puzzle. And essentially, if you don't do the whole thing, everyone does not complete their part of it, and you complete the entire puzzle in an hour, the entire group loses 16K out of the pot. I got to be honest with you. Immediately after they explained it, and then I rewound it to understand it again, I went, there's no way they're completing this in an hour.
No, I noted. So they have to drink this. TJ calls it his energy drink. It's tuna, beet, and mayo, I guess, blended together.
Sure.
And they all have to drink it before they begin. Before they even get to the fort, they've already used up 12 minutes. Like that's basically they've used up a quarter of the time, and they haven't even found one of these boxes.
Yeah. On the run, for me, I could kind of tell like who didn't have a chance and who did. But really, the key to this whole thing was that Corey takes control. Corey starts leading the group. He, in fact, sees the golden chest, grabs the ropes in the golden chest, and decides he's going to run it back. Jay wants to jump in, like he's the only one that kind of speaks up and is like, "Hey, like maybe like I should do it. Are you sure, Corey?" No one else says anything, so Corey just kind of goes and takes control. Jay stays. That to me was a turning point here. Should they? I mean, we know what happens. Obviously, Corey messes up, but should someone else have spoken up in that moment, or is Corey making the smart move and taking control because you want to be in control?
I thought it was a smart move because he said, I guess in confessional, that he thought he should carry the golden ropes, the orange ropes, because there was more of them, because he was the strongest. And when he said that, I was like, he probably is right. Like of the people who are left, he's probably the strongest. And also, he's not the fastest, and you want the slower people to get a head start.
Correct.
Right? Like you want your fastest person to be the last one out of the fort because they can presumably make up whatever time it takes.
Yeah. But what happens on the run back? Corey drops one of his ropes. The other people, as they start to make their way back, are yelling to him that he has to turn around and get his rope because you're not allowed to pick up someone else's rope or help someone else with their rope. So Corey has to run all the way back while everyone is running towards the puzzle. By the time he actually gets back, there's only 10 minutes left, first off. And then there was 2 minutes, essentially, once Corey finally gets all the ropes back to where the puzzle is. They had no chance, as mentioned. Definitely didn't have a chance once Corey messed up. But is the blame solely on Corey?
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, that part of just like carrying the ropes, it's a one-person job. They weren't allowed to touch each other's ropes. Like once it's assigned to one of them. And like at one point, Jay even says it to him. He's like, I can't help you. Like I can run beside you. I can encourage you, but like, you got to do this. I think it just came down to individual efforts to help the team, and they just couldn't do it.
Yeah. So that affects the overall numbers at that point, because what ends up happening is the 16K comes out of the entire pot. The winner still gets 250K. Second place got 60. Third place gets 30. But before the next step, there's an elimination. And you have to decide who is going to head into said elimination. And there's a bit of a debate about this, right? Because they have to vote for who they should go in, and then that person gets to pick who they go against. So there's some strategy here. And I give Corey credit because he did try to throw people off by saying we probably should try to pick someone strong who you think you can beat. Someone who you don't think you can beat in the final. To which Nerys responds, and I would say maybe her fourth of maybe 100 truth-telling things that Nerys says, not only this season, but in this episode. She says, actually, you want to save the strong people because eventually in the next stage, we know we're going to have to partner with them, and you want to be partnered with strong people. Shouts to Nerys. I'm going to say that a lot in this episode. But
yes.
What did you think of this whole process and them actually voting for Corey to go in?
I think that it would have been smarter to vote in Jay or Emmanuel, because I think Corey did not have as well-rounded a game as those two. I think you definitely want to keep Berna in, because Berna, we know, is not good, mentally strong. She's not particularly mentally tough, and we see that a lot throughout the final. And also, apparently she's injured. It comes out when they're running as a group that she has something wrong with her groin and can't run very fast, which is more or less the most important thing that you have to do through a final is run.
Yeah.
So like I hear Nerys's logic, but I think you want to keep Berna around because that means you are essentially second last. worst case scenario, you're going to be second last.
Yeah. No, it was, I mean, I understand them voting for Corey because like it's kind of the easiest move as well, because he did just cost the team 16K. And I got to give Corey some credit.
Yeah.
Once they vote in Corey, he says he doesn't want to pick Nerys because she's already been in an elimination already, and he doesn't think that's fair. And at the time I wrote down, wow, I'm actually stunned by Corey. Well done. But now as I'm repeating that, I'm thinking, but I'm saying this in hindsight, obviously, was he just afraid to go against Nerys in an elimination? Maybe
I think
could that be part of it?
I think he was a little afraid of her, which is fair. But I also think that he probably feels that like when it comes to running, he can run faster than Nerys.
Fair. Yeah.
Right. And like if you're Corey, he's not the fastest runner because he's sort of big and lumbering. You want to eliminate the people who are quicker than you. And I think his logic was sound. I think picking Jay was the right choice.
Yeah, he picks Jay, and he says he picks Jay because he's sketchy. Couldn't agree more. Jay says as soon as he knew Corey was going down, he knew Corey was going to pick him, which is a lie because come on, how do you know what was going to happen? Anyways, here's the elimination. You get to run and retrieve 3 bags with puzzle pieces, then put the puzzle together, but you have to put the puzzle together and balance it on a board with your foot. This was a waste of time, but essentially Jay messes up first. He can't balance it. Corey crushes it. Jay goes home. And no one wanted Jay to win, right?
Can we savor this for a moment?
Yeah.
I was so relieved. I know I said this on the last episode of You Killed It when you asked me who did I want to see win. I think we're in agreement. We want Nerys to win. Mm-hmm. And then like my number 2 choice is anyone but Jay.
Correct.
Like also, hey, how great is it to have Jay off of our screens earlier rather than later? Like, great. I love this.
I love that it wasn't even close, that Jay came close to winning. I actually wrote down, and maybe it's still the effects of the Super Bowl, karma is a game called The Challenge. What is wrong with me? That's a note I wrote like a week ago. What is going on right now? It's like it knew the mood I would be in whenever we were recording this.
So after Jay's eliminated, he turns around and says, Nerys, you better win it all. How do you feel about this? After he was such a dick to her 2 days ago in real time?
He's a loser. Straight loser vibes. You can't turn back around now and pretend like everything's all good and everything's cool. I'm going to tiptoe. No, I'm not going to tiptoe around how I say this because I am in the right here. In my past place of employment, I was let go unfairly by someone. That someone now works for the same company that I work for now. And so I see that person. That person now tries to say what's up to me as if everything's cool. And like, I'm cordial. I'm a grown up. I'm mature. I like to think that at my age now, I'm a more mature person that would definitely handle this differently 15 years ago. But like now I'm just kind of like, I give the head nod, like a sup, but like, that's about it. But I'm also just like in my mind, I'm like, I hope you don't think everything's cool. Like that's not a world we can live in.
No.
I say all that to equate this to Nerys and Jay. We can't be cool now that, now you're rooting for me to win, but not all the times that you were just throwing me into the eliminations or throwing in my partners into the elimination. Get out of here, Jay.
And like was so petty and petulant afterward, like in the last snake thing that they had to do, like he was such a baby about the whole thing. Mm-hmm. Like he's only acting this way because he's hoping that now things are going to be good between them in real life. Like the thing about Jay and Michelle, I'm going to lump them together, is they both want to live consequence free. Mm-hmm. And like you can do whatever you want in this life, but you just have to accept there's consequences for what you do. If you're a good person, there's consequences. If you're a bad person, there's consequences. If you're a neutral person, there's consequences. He, in particular, was shitty all season to Nerys and self-centered. Mm-hmm. Now he has to live with those consequences. He damaged their real-life friendship. And, like, turning around and, like, cheering her on at the last minute doesn't fix that.
Nope, I agree totally with you wholeheartedly. I think it's hella whack, to be honest, what he did in that sense. Luckily, though, for us, 6 people left heading into chaos. You have 5 rotating pairs, 5 checkpoints. Each checkpoint, you switch to a new pair. Along the way, you keep your individual time, and the winner will have some power. TJ randomly selecting the pairs. And yeah, Berna is just the worst. That's just what I'll say here. I don't even need to go through the rest of the pairs here because essentially it's just like if you were paired with Berna, essentially you were going to lose or like close to losing, if that makes sense.
I think what we have to I think we can gloss over all these checkpoints basically, but I think the 3 big takeaways are this. Emmanuel wins, I think, 4 out of the 5 of them.
Yeah.
And builds, at first, is a pretty decent lead. Mm-hmm. Berna complains throughout to the point that she even alienates arguably her best friend in Colleen at the food station where they're paired together. And Nerys, who you and I were rooting for, and I believe most of the listeners of You Killed It were listening to, kind of struggles. Not that she did badly, but just like she keeps getting paired with the worst possible person for that competition, like for that stage.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? Like in each, like all of these stages are so drastically different in terms of taking a different sort of strength to succeed. And yet, no matter what it was, Berna was there to drag her partner down. And it's like, you can't run, you can't push the huge sphere, and then you also can't eat. Like, you can't eat. Like, that made no sense to me.
Berna's self-talk is so bad. Like, it takes so little to derail her. Like, it's honestly, it's sad. Like, again, like, I think Berna in real life would probably be a fine human being. She's not cut out for this show. Like, she doesn't have the mental toughness. She can't ride the ups and downs, right? Like, I've heard, I don't know how true this is. I'm not a psychologist, but I've heard that there's what they call the 4 intelligences. One is just like your quotient. So there's intelligence quotients, IQ. We probably all know that. Emotional quotient. I forget what the other one is, but one is adversity and like how well can you handle adversity. She cannot handle any kind of adversity.
Yeah.
And like, I imagine that makes life hard.
Yeah, definitely. Like, 'cause she is what I would term an energy sucker.
Yeah.
Right? Like, she sucks the gravity right out of the room. And it was so bad that it made me feel bad for Jay. Because I honestly was watching this and thinking, she's talking about quitting right after someone just got eliminated out of the final. Like, what? Why didn't they just put you in the elimination then so you could quit in the elimination and go home?
I do have to highlight something. My line of the episode is in here.
Okay.
So after they get through the gross eating competition, TJ's like, oh, and you have to have more of my energy drink. And as he's handing them out, Mariah goes, I'm over you, TJ. And TJ replies, I'm over you, TJ.
The best host there is, man.
He is so good. So
best host there is.
Emmanuel wins the whole stage, and he gets to choose who's going to go into elimination.
Yeah.
Basically, his choice is between Corey, who's right behind him in the standings, or Nerys. He chooses Nerys, which is probably the right choice. As much as I like Nerys, like, probably the right choice. What did you think?
I thought the obvious choice is Corey. You're trying to win, and Corey was the closest person to you. So you eliminate the closest person to you, and you win easily, in theory, right? Like, without the hindsight of knowing what happens, I'm saying just in that moment. I actually thought if you don't pick Corey, you're a moron. But the way that the season's gone,
I can't
say that.
I can't believe I'm going to defend Emmanuel here. This is a low point. But they do know that the next stage is going to be individual. And keeping that in mind, I think Nerys is a more dangerous individual competitor. And maybe he could recognize, like, ooh, Nerys would have done better if he wasn't paired with Mariah kayaking. And she's infamously bad at that. Fair. And if she wasn't paired with Berna for running, like, and she's paired with Colleen for cutting the rope, which Colleen's really bad at. So, like, maybe he was just doing like an accurate assessment of why people were where they were.
Totally fair. Totally fair.
In any event, it's the draw, which means that just like we saw through the chaos part of the season, Nerys gets to pull one of 6 poles out of the sand. 4 have the names of competitors on them, and 2 are the maces where she gets to take her pick. She draws Mariah's name, which is probably her best matchup, if not Berna, for beating in an elimination. Colleen. What did you say?
Colleen.
I guess Colleen. I think it depends on what the elimination is. But yeah, those are ideal matchups for her.
But again, you're right, though. In a puzzle, I think she'd probably be the favorite against anyone.
Yeah,
That's
out of
left,
all of
for
them.
sure. But yeah, Mariah, I think you're right, actually. In a puzzle, Mariah, you're right. You're right.
So they have to take these like blocks, they sort of look like bricks, put them through a hole in plexiglass, and then fit them so that they fill a box that's larger than the hole in the plexiglass. So in other words, you're like having to maneuver the bricks around under this plexiglass. So like they can't go up or down. You can't just like slot them into place. This looks really hard. Like I don't quite understand how they did it.
Yeah, I thought it was really hard too, but I also knew there was no chance Mariah was going to win. She's going to beat Nerys. There's no chance. And of course, Nerys wins. And I really hoped that Emmanuel loses because he fumbled the bag so hard, I thought.
Yeah.
That was his chance, because I think a lot of people would have struggled in that, and which would have made it random, if that makes sense, in terms of who was going out. So if you put in whoever you deem to be the strongest people, and maybe you're right, he did deem Nerys as being the strongest person, right? Like maybe that was the thought process. I don't know. But at that point, when Nerys won, without knowing what happened next, I was like, Nerys is the MVP of this season.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Easily. She's eliminated 5 people this season.
That's insane.
Like that is insane. Really impressive.
And like big dog competitors, not just like, randoms.
And also, I think this is significant. Like she can hold her head up high with how she treated people.
Yeah.
She didn't do anyone dirty. If she never stabbed anyone in the back, she stabbed them in the front. If she was doing anything like that, she was loyal to the people who were loyal to her.
Mm-hmm.
Like I still think about what she said to Olivia, I think it was, when she's like, when you watch this back, I hope you're really happy with yourself. Because Nerys can be happy with herself. Like she can look back at the season and be like, yeah, like I was good to the people that were good to me.
Yeah. No, definitely agree with that. I definitely think that that's a thing where if you're Nerys or you root for Nerys, like I did a little quick deep dive on the Twitter sphere after last night's finale, and yeah, everyone was rocking with Nerys. As we keep it moving though to the next part of the elimination, basically you have to stay up all night. You're told that off the bat, but TJ says there are consequences if you fall asleep, but also says that there are tasks for you to stay up. And there's this like weird sort of box with holes in it for you to stick your fingers in, and you have to get all the tiles out of your box and remove them. And if you were the 3 people who finished first, they got to pick between a chair, a pillow, or a blanket for the whole night. The top 2 people, though, get to sabotage by putting their squares into someone else's squares. I thought this was a really good part of the final. I thought this was a good little tweak. I liked it.
I love it in the final when they have to stay up all night.
Mm-hmm.
Because
I would not be able to do this.
What, are you kidding? I was just going to say, one of the reasons why I like it is because I think I would be so good at it. I think you would be so good at it. We have 15, I think in your case, 20 years of professional experience staying up late. Like this is way up our alley, Sheldon.
Yeah, but not staying up all night. Like I need sleep at some point. Like I could stay up late. I stay up late every night, but I don't think that I could stay up all night and then be functional the next day.
I think you could do it. I believe in you, Shelley.
Well, I appreciate that. Colleen was not talking to anyone. She was really focused on this, but eventually Nerys ends up finishing first. She sabotages Colleen, and while she's sabotaging her, she's also talking mega trash in terms of explaining to her.
She split up her tiles. She partly sabotaged Emmanuel and sabotaged Colleen. But yes, she was talking so much mess to Colleen. I loved it.
Yeah, me too. I thought it was very well played. And, again, as you said, telling the truth, right? Telling Colleen exactly what the deal is. And Colleen, she struggled in this for sure because of that. Emmanuel still comes in second. Berna comes in third. Then Corey. Then Colleen. And the whole part of it, they just stayed up the whole night. I would have lost it. I'd be so delusional. I would definitely not be able to stay up all night and then swim. Like, I feel like there has to be some liability here where they had to sleep, because there's no way that legally I could deprive you of sleep and then be like, hey, you're now going to swim 2,000 meters. I feel like there's some safety that like is illegal somehow. Like there's some waiver you had to sign or something.
Not in Croatia, baby.
Well played. Well played. Well played.
I do wonder. So like TJ says, if you fall asleep, you'll be penalized. Don't you think it's enough that they're on like a rock beach? Like there was nowhere to sleep. You know what I mean?
I do wonder what the penalty would be.
Seaside, right? Like I, as amused as I was by like, you can't sleep tonight. I was like, if you give them this task with the tiles that they must do, and then they can sleep, no one's going to sleep well anyway. Like you're sleeping on rocks. It's cold out. There's people, there's lights. Like I still think they're all going to be sleep deprived.
No, totally agree. Totally agree. And then now, as sleep deprived as you are, you have to swim 2,000 meters to another island. There's 3 checkpoints, and I couldn't remember at the time who couldn't swim. But essentially, Emmanuel finishes first, then Colleen, then Corey, then Berna, then Nerys, who then passes Berna. But anyways, they all seem to be fairly close to each other. The one thing I will say I give them credit for in this finale is I think they did a really good job of the maps.
Yeah, the maps were helpful.
Yes, it's very Mario Kart-esque in terms of showing who was in front, how far in front they were. Like they did a really good job of giving you context as a viewer in terms of how far ahead Emmanuel's lead was, let's say. When they get to the first checkpoint, you have to rappel down a cliff. Now, looking at this turned into a really funny part of the episode. Maybe one of the funnier parts of the episode, because you had 2 things that happened here. Corey is scared and Berna is scared. But John, they're both scared for 2 completely different reasons, right?
Yeah. So Berna is scared of the drink, the juice, the TJ juice, having to do it again, have it again. And like, I don't get it.
I don't get it either.
Because like, here's the thing. Again, to your point about liability, they're not going to give you something that's like poison. And like, I don't doubt that it tastes gross.
Yeah.
But like, taken separately, mayonnaise is fine, tuna is fine, beet juice is fine. And I'm sure, although it was not created to be tasty, I'm sure it actually helps them in terms of protein and carbs and hydration. Like, I'm sure it was chosen to help them from like a nutrition standpoint. Again, I'm not saying it's going to taste good. I'm just saying that like, you kind of need it. Like it's probably pretty helpful.
But above all, there's no reason for Berna to act the way that she was acting. Like, you're not afraid of this drink. You're not going to quit because you weren't going to have this drink. Like, she just seems like the absolute worst. Like, I couldn't believe that you're in the final and you're trying to make us believe that you were going to quit because you didn't want to drink the drink. Like, get out of here. Like, miss me with all that. There's just a weird flex. Corey, on the other hand, this is bad because I feel like I might be afraid of said cliff as well if I had to do this. But TJ made this so hilarious, right? Because Corey is crying. And as they go to commercial break, Corey is literally crying that he doesn't want to go down the hill. And all you hear is TJ's voice and the way that they echo it, or TJ saying, you know how I feel about quitters. I'm like, this is just amazing. Well done. Well done.
I mean, TJ gives the most dismissive pep talk I've ever heard. We come back from the commercials. He's like, Corey, what's the problem? And then eventually like Corey's like, well, what if I get stuck? Will someone come and save me? Will you come and save me? And TJ is like, yes, I will personally come and save you. God. Like, and you know what? I think TJ meant it. Like, I think TJ really would be like, all right, harness me up. Gotta go get Corey out of here.
He called it a little baby hill. Like, come on, you're not afraid of this little baby hill. There's nothing baby about that hill.
I like that. It's 700 feet. Like, it's pretty big. And I like that at one point he grabs Corey by the arm and forcibly takes him to the edge. He's like, look, it's nothing. Like, he's such a dick about it.
Absolutely amazing.
This is why I always say we just need one episode of like The Bachelor where like TJ shows up for a pep talk. Because, like, normally they have that. What's it? Chris
Harrison?
Thank you.
I think he's gone now.
Chris Harrison would come around and like give them pep talks when they were like got in their feelings. Just once I want TJ Lavin to show up and be like, hey man, you know what you signed up for? Stop crying. Like, get it together.
Just the absolute worst.
So also, runner up for line of the episode, TJ goes, nobody is quitting, and Corey just squeals.
Yeah. So good.
I think a critical part of this, though, is Emmanuel goes down first. He's pretty good at it. He's way ahead because he literally hits the ground running. Then it's Corey and Colleen and Nerys. Like, they're going down in the order that they arrived. But Corey and Colleen are so bad at it that Nerys catches up to them.
Yeah.
On the hill, which is a huge advantage. And like Corey and Colleen fall down so much and they keep knocking Nerys over, who's doing great. But Nerys catches up and Emmanuel is way ahead. Colleen starts catching him, and it's at this point basically Emmanuel, then Colleen, then Nerys, then Corey, because Corey does struggle with the hill.
Yep.
They then have to swim out to a platform and to like memorize the order of all the champions in challenge history, which I think would be very hard. And then swim and put them to like the beach and put them in the proper order. Although Colleen gets there first, she screws up, so she has to swim back out. And another big turning point, Nerys and Corey agree to work together, so they both leapfrog Colleen. What did you think of that decision?
Great decision. I think that, they do a good job, because I think that if you're Nerys, you make the smart move. And Corey, I mean, both of them, it's a great decision for both of them, because at the end of the day, you're trying to close the gap on Emmanuel and you want to get into the money, right? So if you're helping the other person and now it's the two of you going, in theory, you're all going to be in the money. And from Corey's standpoint, he thought he's confident in his running. So he's thinking, hey, I can catch up to Nerys and beat Nerys. So in his mind, he's guaranteeing himself at least second at that point. So it makes sense. And for Nerys, you are so far behind that now if you can guarantee yourself that you're going to move up into the top three, you're going to take that chance too. The thing that I was surprised at, or maybe shouldn't be at this point, was Corey's lack of loyalty to, what's her name? Colleen.
Yeah.
Right? Like, while everyone else was like, oh, I don't mess with Nerys, I'm not going to work with Nerys, Corey doesn't care. He's here for Corey. And there's part of me that respected that in the final, right?
Yeah. I mean, now is the time to be shady.
Yeah.
Now is the time to be shady. This is Corey's time to shine. Just to back it up, when he called Jay sketchy, like, Corey's the sketchiest of them all, right? Like, he's the one I would trust the least in any situation. So the final stage is just like the eliminations we saw in the Conquest. So previously there was 3 paths, and at each path there's a puzzle. When you complete the puzzle, you get a flag. Once you get all the flags, you're done. This one has 5 puzzles. It has 5 branches. Emmanuel gets there first. He's working on the Sudoku. When Corey and Nerys arrive, Nerys is like, now's my time to shine, because I've done this twice.
Yep.
And like when I did it before, the guys were ahead. I can catch them. I can do this.
Yeah.
What did you think when we saw that this was the final leg?
I was excited because I thought Nerys was going to win for sure, right? And
Me too.
especially when you know that Emmanuel had such a head start, and he had such a heavy head start, but by the time they get there, that head start's erased. And I had a feeling he would struggle with the puzzles, but obviously our assumption is Nerys would do well with the puzzles. So I thought this was great. I thought Nerys was going to catch up and win. And so I was excited. I have a question for you though, because essentially this whole thing, right? Like, I don't know if I've seen a final, like, or a stage in a final where like the tides shifted in so many different directions in such a short amount of time. And it made me wonder. I haven't looked into this at all, so maybe someone else will write in and tell us. It made me wonder because my producer brain is going off. Like, do they just have like the best producers / editors ever to like cut that together with all that drama? Because in my mind, I'm like, there's no way this actually played out this exact way that we watched it, where things were changing so quickly in terms of who was in first, who had the most, who had the least. No, I'm not going to do this one. I'm going to do this one. Like, it was just so insane where I thought someone else was going to win this stage like 3 or 4 different times. Like, it changed so drastically.
I think that it was legitimately changed that much, because there's like little tells where you can see like someone drops off their flag and like you can see other people's flags.
Yeah.
There's one point where I'm like, oh man, when Colleen finishes and she runs off, I'm like, oh man, Corey's screwed. He's on the balance beam. But then when they come back from the commercial break, they show a different angle, and Berna shouts to Colleen, "You have to run. Corey's right behind you." And like Colleen legitimately only had like 100 meters ahead of Corey. Like, it really was like down to I think the top 4 probably all finished within 10 minutes of each other.
Well, it was super interesting, right? Because Emmanuel made the decision to leave the Sudoku, go on to the next thing, which I thought was a bad move. But just because everyone else also struggled on the Sudoku, it was actually a good move by Emmanuel, right? Because it helped him, gain some time. The funniest part, though, to me, there are a lot of funny parts in this last stage here. So just going to I'm randomly bouncing around this stage. But when Colleen becomes the first person to finish the Sudoku, and then Berna magically finishes right after telling us that she can't do any math, right? Because she didn't learn any math in circus school.
Or acting school.
But yet she finishes the Sudoku faster than like all these other people who are working so long on it. She finishes it so quickly, and she's like, oh, I didn't copy. And then she's like, well, after the first part, after I saw the first part, and then I figured the rest of it out after. And it's like, right when I think Berna can't be any worse, she is the absolute worst.
So I'm fascinated with Berna. Like, what kind of childhood did she have where her only education is circus school then acting school? Like, am I missing something about Germany? Like, what is going on?
Does she have like movie credits? Like, has she been in like things as an actress? What I'm asking is, how successful has her schooling turned out to be, is what I'm asking essentially.
I mean, it's a great question. I don't know.
Right? Like, because it's just really weird. But either way, I thought this whole thing was the funniest part to me. But also the funniest part was Corey not being able to do the balance beam. At one point, I thought he was trolling.
Yeah.
I was like, there's no way he can be this bad at this.
I don't know. Because, like, to me, I'm also a tall guy. You gotta, like, I know my best balance is when my knees are bent, when, like, I have a wide stance, I get low, right? And, like, he was carrying the flag. If you want to, like, lower center of balance, like, have point the flag down, right? Like, there's things you can do to make this, and he just like had no idea, it seems. Which is insane. Weird for like an athletic guy.
Yeah, like it was just really weird how bad he was at it. Like there's no reason for him to throw it because obviously there's like $30,000 on the line, but I couldn't believe how terrible it was. And if we're being honest, he cost himself money because he couldn't walk across a balance beam. Like that's insane. Like I don't understand how that was a thing.
The other thing is like there is I don't know how long the balance beam was, but like just sprint. Like just run across it. Like it doesn't have to be pretty. Just get across it so fast that you don't have a chance to fall. Right? Like
because like he's not that much bigger than Emmanuel. Like as you mentioned, he's supposed to be somewhat coordinated. Like he's that uncoordinated. Like that was the weirdest part to me. I didn't even understand that. But like as you said, Emmanuel, he was off and running. He got out to like a huge lead as he was the first one to finish it all. I guess my last question about this stage in particular, what would have been the hardest one for you? I wouldn't have been good at the Sudoku. I'll admit that. I think it would have, I don't even know really what a Sudoku is, but I feel like watching the challenge enough, I would know enough to practice my Sudokus going in.
I do Sudoku pretty frequently, and like we only really saw the empty puzzle once, just a glimpse. It looked pretty easy to me.
Okay.
Because like significantly, the center square started with 6 of the 9 potential numbers. So like, I don't know. It seemed kind of easy to me.
I got you.
But
I feel like Nerys was really hampered by this is where the tiredness and came into it because she has a track record of being really good at puzzles. She told us she does Sudokus every day, and then magically she struggled at this one. It was kind of like, oh, okay, something's got to be up here.
Yeah, I don't know. Which one would have been the hardest? I think the balancing would have been really hard, like where you have to stack the 3 stacks of sort of cans or blocks and then like raise it on the platform. That looks very tough, especially like you've been vomiting, you've been running, like your hands are going to be shaking, right? So even stacking them, I mean, we saw it with the competitors, was hard. But yeah, I think that would have been the hardest for me.
As mentioned, I guess the last thing I'll ask you about this part is who did you like, because it changed so many different times in terms of who was going to come in first or who was going to leave there first, at least. I know we're all rooting against Emmanuel, but at one point they even had me believe that Colleen was going to come back and win.
Yeah.
Like, what was the most surprising part of it? Because at one point I thought Corey was going to win. One point I thought Nerys was going to win. And like they did a good job of tricking me.
It seems as though at one point all of them had 4 of the 5 checkpoints completed.
Even Berna. Yeah.
Even Berna. That's crazy. Like this has to be the closest final ever. And when I say that, I don't mean between first and second. I mean between 5th and 1st.
Yeah.
Like it was close. It's like we saw one time Jordan won by like an hour. Or Smashley won by like 30 minutes. This is a lot.
Yeah. And I mean, the race at the end, because Emmanuel, he's off and running. He seems to win by a fair margin over Nerys, who ends up coming in second. And I was very happy for Nerys. And I will say there were a lot of comments online that were like, I don't care. This should be a men winner and a female winner. So Nerys still wins in my books. Like there are a lot of people trying to like paint the narrative that this is still should be a dub for Nerys. And I can't lie to you. I tend to agree with them. Like, listen, I understand the money and Emmanuel wins, and I was having trouble trying to compartmentalize or even like just gain understanding. Like, how could this jerk off possibly win? This guy doesn't deserve to win. Like, how could this happen? Right. And 250,000 to 60,000 for Nerys, which 60,000 is still a good get, right? Like ain't nobody turning down $60,000. So that's still a good get for Nerys.
That's an honest salary for a working person over the course of a year. Like that's
hell yeah. I will say though, I think that for me, Nerys is the winner. Like, that's how I look at this. I don't know.
Yeah, I think she's the MVP. I think she's a unanimous consensus. You killed it MVP for the whole season.
Hell yeah.
I think she did. I think that what it essentially boils down to is when it came to the chaos one where they were switching partners, she got partnered with the worst partner for each scenario possible.
Yeah.
And that's just like bad luck.
Mm-hmm. She also, the first puzzle after they got down the hill, that was her chance to pass a Manuel, and she just fumbled the bag at that puzzle. And then also with the Sudoku. I think those two things, if she finishes those in her normal way that we've seen her do it, she wins.
She also, in the final one, she came and left the Sudoku like twice.
Yeah.
She switched checkpoints a bunch of times. I don't know, like that's adding each like back and forth, up and down, sort of like the hand of the checkpoints of the puzzles. I mean, that's wasting a minute or two.
Yeah.
And she lost to Emmanuel by a minute or two. So
I have a hot take here.
Okay.
I feel like if Nerys actually won, then this would have redeemed this whole season. Like, I'd be coming on this pod and being like, you know what? I talked so much shit about this season, right? The whole way through, we called it the challenge of the losers, whatever. But in the end, Nerys won, and that saved the season. And instead, I think I'm looking at this season and I'm thinking, Nerys did save it in terms of giving me like a rooting interest and a level of enjoyment because there was like a focal point for us to root with and ride with. But overall, as I look at it, this is a season of losers. And like this season and Emmanuel being called a challenge champion, which I cannot fully call him a challenge champion, this is because of a bunch of like loser plays. Like this is on Jay. This is on Asaf. This is on Corey. Most of all, this is on Ed. Okay.
Yeah.
Ed had a chance to send, like it was between Ed and Emmanuel to go into an elimination. And Ed decided that he was going to save the guy going against him to tie the vote in one of the dumbest plays I've ever seen.
I mean, this
and
is
then
also
Emmanuel
on,
goes on and wins.
This is also on Colleen, who like was leading the charge against Michelle and Jay and then lost her nerve and was like, nah.
Yeah. It made no sense. It was just a bad season. And so I almost feel like it's fitting that Emmanuel ends up winning because like it was just a season of bad decisions, bad choices, bad moves all the way around. And to have Emmanuel win, it's just kind of fitting. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Also, sorry, Corey lied. He cheated people, played a crazy political game. And what happened to him at the end? He couldn't walk across a plank, and that's what caused him. That's insane. That's insane to me.
I mean, here's the thing. The whole season was such bad gameplay by virtually everyone. Even people who we like Kyland and Horacio, made bizarre choices. Kyland was sort of the first one to like pull it together, but like, yeah, just a mess.
Yeah. We mentioned the MVP of the season to us, right? I also have an LVP of the season.
Okay.
Because, you know, it's obvious, right? Nerys, clear cut. She won against all odds. She had a showmance. She had an alliance, fought her best friend, took out two of the best players, eliminated 5 different people, won eliminations in the finals. I don't know what else she couldn't have done, right? All odds against her, still finishes second. Berna is an LVP because it's at this point that let's remind people that the plan was to have an all-women's final. Berna goes against that, puts all the men in the final, but then comes in dead last in said final and has arguably one of the worst performances we've ever seen.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's an LVP performance. I think you're making a strong case, Shelley.
I do have one other LVP.
The viewers?
No. And this might be controversial. So I want the people to feel free to mail us, email us, carrier pigeon, Twitter, all of the above, Threads, whatever John's on, you know. But I also think the LVP of this season is Emmanuel's girlfriend.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I feel it's maybe too harsh for her.
Hold on.
I mean,
you chose to date Emmanuel. So
that's true. That's true.
Don't blame me. I didn't cheat on you on national TV. But I'm just saying your man's comes on a reality show, comes home with 250K, but he cheated on you twice or three times that we know of in terms of Colleen and Raven and Olivia. But we know that he shot a shot with DJ Mel, so it could have been more. Or if you let him to his own devices, who knows how many more times it could be. How do you look that man's in the face? And what happens next? Like, I feel like I need to know what happens when he comes home with the 250K. Is everything nice?
I mean, I'm going to say
Is
this,
all forgiven? Is it worth it?
I'm going to say this. I'm not sure I've ever been more excited for the reunion.
Yes.
It could be a great reunion.
Forgot about the reunion.
This could be so much good stuff happening in that reunion. So many people angry with each other. So many friendships ended. We got to find out what happened to Emmanuel and his girlfriend. What's the guy's name that was hooking up with Michelle?
Oh yeah,
and his girlfriend, Callum and his girlfriend. Like, there's so much to dig into. It's gonna be so good.
Can't wait.
Where can people find you on social media?
You can find me on the app formerly known as Twitter and on Instagram. Well, Twitter, Shell Alexander, Instagram, Sheldon Alexander. Huge shouts to the people liking and following us wherever you listen to the pod. We appreciate y'all. Blessings.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram and Threads at jchidleyhill. And until next episode, this was You Killed It.
Can't yell just because, the walls have ears. You don't know where I am right now, but...
Do you want me to do it?
Please.
You killed it.
Well done. Well done.
Thank you.